It's funny because every time I get sick, that's when I have a good game or I have a good first half. Hopefully, I get sick more often.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We're here to talk about all of Friday's action. We're going to preview Saturday's 8 games as well. So
let's get to it.
It's a very, very good idea. There's lots to talk about. I don't want to keep you guys too long. We'll still have all the extra information, but some of these pods are going way too long, and I do apologise for that. I know some people prefer brevity. I apologise also if you're watching the live stream of this. It is extraordinarily hot here in Australia at the moment, and for some reason, extremely hot temperatures means that the internet has been shit all day. So there will be dropouts. That is unavoidable. I will upload the non-dropout one later on, and that will be fine. But if you are watching live, or if you are watching the archived live stream, it will be shit because there's going to be dropouts, no doubt, because the internet's been turning on and off all day because we live in a country that has no idea about technology. Cool. Let's move on to the monstrous line of the night, and it is Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. I don't really think that Steph's had any monstrous lines. Oh, no, he would have. He had that night where he hit the 13 threes, but it's been few and far between, so I haven't been scrambling to come up with Steph Curry puns for titles as often this year as what I have in the past. He had 40 points against the Grizzlies in an overtime game, had 5 triples, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, had a steal, had a block, and was super efficient, going 15 of 27 from the field and hitting all 5 of his free throws. Now, Steph, it is fair to say, has been somewhat of a disappointment this season, but he's still the 6th ranked player. When we talked about him in the preseason, it was, you take him in the top 4, probably, I would have taken him at number 2 in Roto. Probably 3 or 4 in head-to-head leagues. At a dip of 4 to 6 is still a dip, but it's not a massive dip. His threes, he's scoring 5.5 less points a game. He's scoring 1.3 threes, less threes a game. Surprisingly, his assist numbers have dropped, which is not something we saw coming. His efficiency has dropped, again, not something we saw coming. He's gone from 50 to 47%. He's gone from 45% on threes to 40%. These are not things that we expected to happen. He just doesn't look the same. It's like that knee injury in the playoffs not ruined him, but took away his peak. And that's sort of how it feels at the moment. And there's still obviously a chance for him to come back from this. He gets that efficiency back up to 50% from the field to 45% from 3. That boosts his threes, it boosts his scoring. If he somehow can turn assists on again, I don't really know what's happening with, that was something we thought, okay, he was scoring, will drop. No doubt, no worries about that. He's not hitting 5 threes a game. Yep, we know that as well. But we thought the efficiency would rise and we thought the assists would rise. And unfortunately, those two things have both fallen off. But there's still hope for Steph to get it back, and he could very comfortably finish the season as a top 4 player. He's only at number 6 at the moment, so he could definitely jump back into that area. But a huge game tonight against the Grizzlies. Unfortunately, the Warriors weren't able to get a win. And I saw something today that the Warriors have not won a game against the Cavs, the Grizzlies, the Rockets, and there was one other team. I don't remember who it was. And they're 0-5 against all those teams, like good teams. So that's a little bit concerning, but we'll see how it all pans out, I guess. I guess it's good that the Warriors aren't unbeatable. We all like a little bit of mystery, I guess, heading into the playoffs. Let's talk waiver wire line of the night, and it goes for the second time this week to Willie Reed of the Miami Heat. 22 points for Reedy, 12 boards, 2 assists, 3 blocks, 10 of 15 from the field, and 2 of 5 from the line. This was a game where Hassan Whiteside was out again. But impressively in this one, the last time he had a big game, it was a game that James Johnson was out as well. But Johnson played in this one, and they played alongside each other a lot. Willie Reed played 32 minutes here, and it's his second 22-point scoring performance in the last 2 games. He took a lot of shots, he converted them at a high rate, and now he has blocked 7 shots in the last 3 games. In fact, he has blocked a shot in the last 10 consecutive games. Obviously, 3 of those have been in big roles, or 4 of them actually have been starting roles. But the other ones just coming off the bench. It's a name to remember if Hassan Whiteside happens to get injured at some point later in the season. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories with Whiteside. Oh, he got paid. He's lazy now. He's going to just stop playing. I don't by that, yeah, you know what, he might sit down for the last 4 or 5 games of April. That's why you don't play in April. But he's not just packing it in at All-Star break and just say, you blokes go on the road, I'll just hang back in Miami. It's just not happening. So I'm not concerned about that. But I would be looking at it towards the end of the year. If an actual legit injury happens with Whiteside, then Reed is an interesting player, and he's always been able to put up some numbers, as we saw in his time at Brooklyn last season, where he only played 11 minutes a game, but per 36 he was at 15.5 and 10 with 2.5 blocks, which is actually better than his per 36s for this season, which are 13.5, 12.5 and 2. So he does have a decent amount of potential. Let's hope he gets the stuff right that bothered him with his mental condition last season. But it's still going to take a fair few things to go right or wrong, depending on your perspective, for Reed to have much of an impact this year. Whiteside should be back for the next game for the Heat, and that's going to push him back to a 10, 12-minute role or so off the bench. But really impressive performance from Reed, and it's definitely something to just keep in the memory. The young gun of the night.
Percentages.
Kristaps was back from his Achilles issue, 24 and 6. He hit 3 triples. He had 3 blocks. He was 9 of 14 from the field and 3 of 4 from the line. Porzingis, over the last 2 weeks, has only played 4 games, but he's the 7th ranked player in that time, going 23 and 9.5 with 3 blocks a game, averaging 3 blocks a game and 2.3 threes. He started this season off really low in his blocks. He wasn't there. He's now up to a rate that's higher than last year. He's at 2 blocks a game now. He's taken his field goal percentage up to 46%. He's taken his 3-point percentage up to 41% and unfortunately regressed in the free throw. So we could actually see some improvement, him going there. He's been ridiculous. He's going to be a top 20 pick next year. He's ranked 25th so far this season, and he's got obviously room to continue to grow. And if he continues averaging 3 threes and 3 blocks a game, that's pretty rarefied air. And let's just and remember, today he only played 30 minutes. So he wasn't at his full go. The 3 previous games to this, he'd played 38, 42, and 31. So we're going to get a few more minutes out of Porzingis, and obviously really, really good to have him back. The dud of the night goes to Jordy Clarkson of the Los Angeles Lakers. Just the handful of minutes for Clarko. He only played 10 minutes, had 4 points, nothing else. No boards, no steals, no assists, no blocks. 2 or 4 from the field, and he got ejected in this game. Him and Goran Dragic tussled, and they both got tossed. But it doesn't mean that he was necessarily playing well before that. He is a guy that I have talked about quite a bit recently. He's ranked outside the top 200 for the last 2 weeks, outside the top 115 for the season. 10-team leagues, you don't need to bother with Jordan Clarkson. 12-teamers, I guess it depends on who you'd be adding. But you look at your roster and look at it honestly. Is he your worst player? Is he your second worst player? That puts him comfortably in drop zone territory. So really take a look at that, because his minutes are up and down. He played big in the game yesterday, but all the previous games we've been talking about 17 minutes or so a night, and here he had very small playing time, obviously. But some of that was ejection involved. So that is your award winners for the night. Now, with the Kyle Korver trade we talked about yesterday, looks like Mo Williams will also coming to Atlanta. I don't imagine that Mo is going to play, so there's no impact there. And I've had a real think about Korver again, about his value in Cleveland, and I'm even more firm in my thoughts that I just don't think that he's going to be a 12-team league guy, and the biggest impact he's going to have in fantasy is from someone else grabbing him and dropping someone valuable. I sent a tweet out for people to go and read the thread on Reddit about Korver, and this gives you an idea of some of the thoughts of some people. It's not everybody, but someone's like, do I drop favors for him? All right, so that was the one that really, there were others there that I thought no, but that was one that really stood out to me. So that's what you do. Who grabbed Korver, and who did they idiotically drop? Because dropping favors for Korver would be a dumb move. So that's the biggest impact that Korver is going to have. He's not going to come in and play 35 minutes a night. We have to remember that he is not Kyle Korver from the 2015 All-Star game. He is not, and he hasn't been that for 2 years. And we can see that in his numbers, and going from a worse team to a better team doesn't necessarily increase all your playing time, usage, stats, all that sort of stuff. It doesn't happen. So really, everything I said yesterday, I'm even more steadfast with it today. Let's talk about the games now. We'll get into them in a little bit of extra detail. Houston and Orlando is the first one we're going to take a look at. Patrick Beverley was fantastic yet again, putting up some huge numbers. 31 minutes for Beverley, 17, 9 and 3, 3 steals, 3 triples, and 7 of 9 from the field. He has been fantastic this season. I thought he could be better this year. I didn't think he'd be this good. He's only owned in 70% of leagues, which is a joke. He needs to be owned in all of them. So go and have a look. If for some reason he's available, you got to add him. Ryan Anderson had 19 points with 5 triples, actually added 2 steals as well, which is very unlike Ryan Anderson. You know my take on him by now. And Trevor Reza had a pretty solid game. He went 13 and 6, had 3 triples in this one. Jimmy Harden wasn't his best night. He went 5 of 15 and only 4 of 6 from the line. 14, 7 and 10 with a steal. So still got you some of those peripheral numbers, but not a great counting stat 9. And Montrezl Harrell was back in the starting lineup, the table. Only played the 22 minutes though. Had 9 and 4, a steal and a block. So the numbers aren't terrible, but this was the night that Mike D'Antoni decided to go to Nene. Nene played 25 and went 4, 3 and 2, and he had 3 steals. This is the most minutes Nene has played since the beginning of December. In fact, it's the first time that he has played over 20 minutes since the 12th of December. So we're not talking about a situation of Nene necessarily stealing this role. Remember, the last game Nene started and played like 16 minutes. It was just a weird situation. Harrell wasn't in foul trouble, but for some reason D'Antoni went to the inferior center. The Rockets did get the victory, 100-93, but I'm not panicking about the table. Eric Gordon had 17, 3 and 4 with his 3 triples, which has become standard. Speaking of coaches doing weird things with rotations, the Orlando Magic, they started Alfred Payton again, but played DJ Augustine 29 minutes, the most minutes he's played in weeks as well. 19, 1 and 2 with 4 triples for Augustine, while Lord Alfred only played the 25 and went 12, 2 and 2 with 2 steals. He was efficient. He shot 6 of 10, but just went with Augustine in a different look. Just again, weird shit from coaches mixing it up. Don't worry too much about looking at Augustine as an ad or anything like that, but you got to look at Aaron Gordon. 18, 6 and 7, 2 threes, 36 minutes, 1 steal. I look at the 36 minutes and that's what gets me really pumped. But the other numbers are obviously awesome as well, especially the 7 assists. And I've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, how much better he looks. And I was still worried about the minutes that that Vogel was getting him. But this is obviously a step in the right direction. He's still ranked outside the top 160 for the season, but he's a top 70 player over the last 2 weeks. Clearly he has to be owned. There was big stretches where he didn't. But as I've said, the entirety of this season, there's not anyone that would be on your wire most likely who has a higher upside than Aaron Gordon. So, holding on to him was tough, and I dropped him in a 10-team league. I held on to him in a 14-teamer, and I've held on to him in 12-team leagues. But in certain situations, you would have had to make that move. But if he's around, you go back and grab him. Bismack Biyombo played under 20 minutes again, 2 and 5 with 2 assists and a steal, while Nick Vucevic only saw the 28 going 9 and 12. They played a bit more with neither of those guys on the court, which is not a horrible decision. 9 and 12 for Vooch in this one with a black shin. Sorry, no, they didn't. They played together. No, let me rephrase that. There wasn't much time with them off the court. In fact, they didn't. I'm completely tongue-tied here. What I'm trying to say is that they didn't play them together. So they played them just at centre, giving the opportunity for Aaron Gordon to play a little bit more minutes at the 4. I'm glad that that's all sorted. Jeffrey Green only played the 20 minutes, the 7 points there, while Evan Fournier was back in the starting lineup going 10 and 9 with 2 assists in 35 minutes for Fournier. So the minutes are back. We just need the production to kick back. He was only 4 of 13, probably shaking off just a little bit of rust there, and that moved Jody Meeks back into a 14-minute bench role. Serge Ibaka went 16 and 12, but didn't do a huge amount there, and oddly missed both of his free throw attempts. Let's move on to the next game, and that is Minnesota and Washington. Wiggo with a huge night, 39 points for Andrew Wiggins in the 105-112 loss. The Wizards get the victory there. Wiggo had 41, but in true Andrew Wiggins fashion had 1 rebound. He had 2 assists. He did have 2 steals, so that's nice. And he was also a brilliant 16 of 30 from the field and 8 of 10 from the line. So good numbers there, but you obviously really don't enjoy the fact that he gets no rebounds and no assists. I still do have faith in Wiggins. I still think that he can become a better player. But I'm not really... I don't know. I'm just worried that these other numbers aren't going to come with him, whether he's going to get these other peripheral numbers. Occasionally he flashes them, and some of the numbers are up this year, but the defensive stuff is way down and the percentages are down. Let's hope he can turn that around, because there is a top 50 player living in Andrew Wiggins. We've just got to see it realised. Gorgie Jeng and Carl Towns both double-double. Townsy went 18, 10 and 5 with a steal and a block, while Jeng went 15 and 11 and had 2 steals, while Rick Rubio, just the 4 points, only took 3 shots, but had 5 rebounds, 7 assists and a steal. There was no Shabazz Muhammad, so Brandon Rush took all his minutes and scored 10 points in 20 minutes, while Zachy Levine had not a good night. 3 of 14 for Zach, 8 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. Just an off night there. For the Wizards, the biggest surprise is Marcin Gortat played just 33 minutes. Still was brilliant, 19 and 10 with 3 blocks and hit all 9 of his shots in a fantastic performance, while Johnny Wall went 18, 2 and 18 with 2 steals on 50% shooting. Otto Porter, another efficient night, 7 of 12 for 17, 6 and 2. He had a 3, he had a steal, he had 2 blocks, and his form this season has been fantastic. It has been I was a big Otto Porter fan in his first couple of years. He did drop off significantly in a stretch last year, and I wasn't all that excited about him heading into the season because Scotty Brooks had said in preseason it's going to be open competition for minutes, which was weird to me because I don't rate Oubre at all. That was a weird comment from Brooks, and that sort of worried me about Porter, but I never thought that he would... I knew that he was a better player than Oubre. I just never thought that he would be as good as what he's been. So fantastic stuff from here, while Braddles Beal had 25 points with 5 triples. With Gortat only playing the 32 minutes, Jason Smith played 22. He had 10 and 3 with 2 blocks, nothing to get excited about, while Markeith played 36 and went 15 and 6, and Kelly Oubre was reduced down to just 14 minutes. Philadelphia and Boston, Joel the Process Embiid was able to play, and he was good. Of course he was good. He fouled out though, so 23 and 8 with 3 assists and 2 blocks, hit all 10 of his free throws, went 6 of 12 from the field. Yeah, really hard to look at those numbers and go, this guy's not fantastic, because he is, really. Realistically, when we look at it, he is such a bright spot in the NBA this season, putting up massive numbers in limited playing time, and he feels like he's got a top 10 fantasy future written all over him. Interestingly and correctly, Jahlil Okafor did not play. The backup center was Nerlens Noel, and he played 25 minutes. He went 13 and 8. And he did what he does defensively, 2 steals and 3 blocks. And that is fantastic. Now, he did get some extra run because Embiid fouled out, but Noel had some foul trouble of his own. So those 2 guys, Embiid and Noel, combined for 11 fouls. We still saw no Okafor. And if Noel is getting 25 a night, then there's absolutely room in a 12-team league for him, because what he does with the defensive numbers is absolutely going to be worth owning. And a 13-8, 2-2-3 line is ridiculously good. Now, it seemed like they were committed, well, not that, it didn't seem like, they said he is out of the rotation. So that made it tough to own him. But they've made the switch, and now Okafor is seemingly out of the rotation. We don't know that for sure, but he is seemingly out of the rotation now. And Noel can put up numbers. I hope they keep him. I know there's off-court stuff. I know there's financial decisions with Noel, but I do hope they keep him because he is the better player, and he's by far the best fantasy contributor. There's no point in holding on to Okafor even when he was in the rotation, I believe, and now there's definitely no hope. TJ McConnell made another start with Spanish Chocolate out. 37 minutes for McConnell, 9, 4, and 17 with 2 steals. Real chance that he keeps the job when Rodriguez comes back, and even if he doesn't, it could be a minute split. Rodriguez is probably back for the next game or 2. But getting a point guard who can give you numbers, which is what McConnell can do, is extremely valuable. Now, when Ben Simmons returns, whenever that is, sometime this month is what we're expecting, but we don't. He has started working out, but it doesn't look to be too intense, so he seems like he's still a fair distance off. I would guess probably early February would be my guess for Simmons at this point. And that's when McConnell will start to lose some time. Obviously, when Rodriguez comes back, he will cut into some of that as well. But he's worth taking a look at. Ersan Ilyasova, 32 minutes, 20 points, 4 triples, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Man, Ersan has been ridiculous for this team. He is a must-own player. And Bob Cove only had the 9 points, took 6 shots. It didn't completely destroy your field goal percentage. But with Bob Cove, it's the other stuff that counts. It's the fact that he had a Richie Beno.
2 for 2.
2 threes, 2 steals, 2 blocks, also chucked in 2 assists there as well. So a really good defensive number and hitting those threes for Bob Cove, and his ownership percentage is still ludicrous to me. Dario Saric played 23, he went 8 and 7. He's going to find it tough to crack 12-team value, but he's a really valuable 14-team league guy. For the Celtics, Amir Johnson, someone we got to pay attention to. Brad Stevens played him 26 minutes. He went 13, 5 and 3. He had a steal. He had 4 blocks. He hit 2 triples. And not because of this performance. or in part because of this performance. And that's obviously great, having 4 blocks, having 2 triples, having 13, that's great. But the fact that he is now in a more stable situation, his role, his minutes feel more stable, and it's like, I feel like Stevens does this all the time, is that, and so many coaches do, for the first 2 months, they just dick around with everything. Oh, let's just see what happens, just mix it up, and then they get into January and they go, right, we know what we have, we know what we need to run, and let's do it. So we're seeing that in Los Angeles. We'll talk about that a bit later with the Lakers starters. And I think we're seeing it a little bit now more in Boston with Amir Johnson feeling like he's getting more consistent. Right now, Stevens will come out and make me look like an idiot in the next game and play Tyler Zeller 28 minutes. But Johnson is becoming more secure. And a guy that can get 25 a night, which I'm not sure he can, but if he could, hit some threes, block some shots, grab some rebounds, be pretty efficient, that can have back-end value. It can be useful in playoffs in certain builds, and it really becomes a 14-team must-own sort of situation. Al Horford, 19 and 12, 4 triples and 2 blocks for Big Al, while Avery Bradley hit 6 triples on his way to 26 points and had 9 rebounds there. Marcus Smart, the hot shooting can't continue, as I've talked about plenty of times, so it went down to 6 of 14, which is 43%. It was still a good night, 24, 4 and 3, but this is why he couldn't maintain top 5 numbers, and I think we all understood that. While Marcus Smart put up a really great Marcus Smart line, 14 points, 2 threes, 2 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 steal and 2 blocks. He went 4 of 12 from the field, so that's very Marcus Smarty, but hit all 4 of his free throws. And I reckon you'd be surprised to know that over the last 2 weeks he's a top 100 player, even though he's shooting 39% from the field. You know, on the surface, that makes him a must-own guy, but I would take it and say, in a punt field goal build, he has to be owned because he's getting you the assists, he's getting you some boards, some steals, some threes, really great free throw percentage as well over these last couple of weeks, like 90% we're talking about. And you take the field goal percentage out, the other numbers are great. Now, he has been a bit up and down. He's gone from 30 minutes at 25 to 26, but the numbers are showing you that you want to be looking at that in that punt field goal build. He's got a ton of value. So have a look, see if he's around and see if he can actually help your team. Jay Crowder was not ideal. He still did have 2 steals and 2 blocks, so that helps. But 0 points from the field, 0 of 4 from the field there, and just the 2 rebounds. Wasn't a great night for Crowder. He's a weird one to me. He was a player that I never really thought very highly of at all coming across to Boston. Even in that first season at Boston, wasn't a big fan. He was honestly and low-key pretty terrible at the end of last year, the first couple of months. He had some knee issues, but he was terrible. It wasn't quite Damari Carroll terrible, but he was bad. And then started off the season probably a little bit sluggishly this year, but he's still been good. But he's just one of those guys that I feel at some point soon, it's going to come unraveled for him, because I feel like he's had a nice little run, he's proved himself solid, but at some point, and I think it'll be soon, this is just speculation of how I feel about these guys, I just fear at some point, maybe it's next year, that it just really starts to unravel and the Celtics go, we actually need a better small forward. We'll see. That's just my take on it. I know Celtics fans love the guy. I think he's a really good guy as well. I think he seems like a really passionate and a great teammate. But I do have those concerns. Cleveland and Brooklyn. Kyrie was back. Kevin Love was back. So they took on the Nets on the road. Naturally, they'd smash them. No, they only won by 8. But there was still some big numbers here. LeBron went 36, 9 and 6. Kyrie went 32, 3 and 4 with 2 steals. Lovey went 17 and 13 with 4 triples. I think part of the reason that they struggled is because both Kyrie and Love shot under 40% from the field. But yeah, we know what those guys are. Part of the reason is looking at this, when I talked about Kyle Korver earlier, is that, okay, so Korver comes in, he's better than DeAndre Liggins. We know that. He's better than Jordan McRae. He's better than Kay Felder. Is he better than Iman Shumpert? At shooting threes, he is, yes. Is he better at Iman Shumpert at defense? No, not a chance. Is he better than DeAndre Liggins at defense? No. But with LeBron getting 20 shots, with Irving getting 26 shots, with Love getting 16 shots, where is Korver fitting into all this? There's no other value on this Cavs team outside of Tristan Thompson, who is a back-end guy for specific builds only. There's no one who sniffs 12-team value. And Thompson probably should be owned. Now, he had 10 and 9 here with 3 steals and 2 blocks and hit all 3 of his field goals and went 5 of 13 from the free throw line. But, you know, where's Korver fitting in here? I've said, I'm not saying anymore. The Nets, No Jeremy Lin, so they made a change at starting point guard and proceeded to play that starting point guard less than the backup. Now, Spencer Dinwiddie started, played 18 minutes, but had foul trouble. So I'm going to chalk it up to foul trouble. 7 and 5, while Isaiah Whitehead played 30 off the bench and went 10 and 10 with 3 assists. Dinwiddie's the better player. I like Dinwiddie. I've been saying I like Dinwiddie for 2 years, and I'd like to see him have an extended shot. Not that means I want Jeremy Lin out, but while Lin is out, I'd like to see Dinwiddie be the guy that gets the majority of the minutes here. Let's just see where it goes. But deeper leagues, you might want to take a short-term look at Spencer. Decent game from Whitehead, but I really don't buy him as a player. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson was back. 15 minutes for Jefferson. 4 and 4. Had the 2 steals, but he is a long way off sniffing 12-team league value. While Joe Harris made another start, but that's not the shooting guard that we care about. Because the guy we care about is Caris LeVert. Now, LeVert played 27 minutes. He had 19 points. He had 4 rebounds. He had 5 assists. He had 2 threes. By now, you know that I like Caris LeVert. By now, you know that I've been telling you that this guy is good. By now, you know that his game is good for fantasy. By now, everyone's got that idea. So, let's have a look. He has a real chance to be a top 100 post All-Star guy. The crap that's around him is not a big impediment. Shawnee Kilpatrick played just the 19 minutes here. Been good, not that good of a player. Not the future of this team. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with LeVert. Wouldn't add him in 12-team leagues. Wouldn't add him in 14-team leagues. But if you've got some flexibility in 16s, maybe you look at it. In dynasties, you're out of contention. That's a top 100 player sitting there who could be top 100 as early as next season. He can pass. He gets assists. He can rebound. He can score. He can hit threes. He can get steals. He can be efficient. There's not much more you can ask from players. I couldn't be higher on LeVert out of this draft. He's one of the guys I was most high on coming out of this draft class, and give him 30 plus minutes, and he should be a top 100 guy at some point in the next 2 years. And that's the way we're hoping his career path goes. Trevor Booker, big minutes here for Booker, 32, 13 and 12. Still don't think that he's an absolute lock for 10-teamers. The numbers had been dwindling, but this was a good performance there, obviously. While Brookie Lopez played the 33 and had 17 points. Not a lot else happening there. 1 triple and 1 rebound. Not a very good Brook Lopez night. As for Kilpatrick, if there's someone you want to add, he's your worst player. Get rid of him. New York and Milwaukee. Talked about Porzingis being back. Melo. 39 minutes for Carmelo Anthony. 26 points. 6 rebounds, and yes, Carmelo Anthony had 10 assists. Now, I'll answer this question, but I'll ask you, and you can have a think when you're sitting around listening to this podcast. How many times in Melo's career do you reckon he's had 10 assists? I should put thinking music in there. Let's use this as thinking music. All right, that's enough. The answer is 6. So, my point is, don't get married to Carmelo Anthony getting 10 assists. And the fact that he's had 10 assists that few times in his career is not a great thing for him, I guess, as a wing player. But it was always nice to get a bonus 10 assists from one of your players. Courtney Lee did it all, but didn't do it all well necessarily. 11, 2, and 3, 2 triples, a steal, and a block. So contributed everywhere. And he's a solid 14-team league guy. And just as we thought, yep, Joakim Noah, he's playing minutes, it's all happening here. He plays 20. He goes for 8 and 9, but he fouled out. So let's give Hornacek benefit of the doubt here with the foul problems in this game and not think that it's just him going back to that early season mantra of my centers played well, time to bench him. Kyle O'Quinn, the cock monster, played 26 minutes. He had 9 and 8 as well. He had 2 steals and 2 blocks. And this is what happens with O'Quinn. Whenever he plays, the numbers will come. That is just what happens with him. But recent trends have shown us that the minutes won't be there. So I'd like to see what happens with Noah if he's not fouling out in 20 minutes. But I feel okay if you grab Noah, and I wouldn't be rushing to drop him nor to add Kyle O'Quinn. Lance Thomas played 20 minutes. That's probably 20 minutes too many. 2 triples for 10 points. Not much else for Lance, and he hit all 4 of his shots. While Derrick Rose, he was rosy. He had 0 threes. He had 0 steals. He was 4 of 14 from the field, but he did have 8 assists, so I do give credit where it's due. And Justin Holiday and Brandon Jennings combined for 13 minutes. They need to play more. Well, Ronnie Baker, he got some extra run. He had 12 minutes for 6, 2 and 4. The Knicks got the victory 116, 111 over the Bucks. Yanni, 25, 6 and 2. 2 threes, 2 steals, 5 blocks.
Pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. Tony Snell was also pretty good, and he played 38 minutes here, the Snellster. 13 points, but he had 3 triples, he had 2 steals and 2 blocks. I couldn't say fluke anymore if I wanted to. Brogo struggled a little early on, but still came back with a solid night. 31 minutes, 10, 6 and 5, and he may not retain the starting job, but I reckon he retains the starters' minutes. I reckon he retains the 27 minutes a night, and Daly plays 23, 24, and they play together some as well, and he is a viable guy to hold on to. Johnny Henson, on the other hand, is not. 20 minutes for Henson, 4 and 6, and finally, again, it takes coaches a while to realise this, but your best centre is Greg Monroe, so he has his deficiencies, as everybody does, but he's your best centre. Play him the most minutes, and let stuff happen. 28 minutes for Monroe, 19, 7 and 4, 2 steals and a block. I'm not getting my hopes up that it's going to be a consistent 28 a night moving forward, but I am feeling that's going to be the case. But this is Jason Kidd, the maker of bad decisions. So we'll have to wait and see, but it's been promising. Jabari had 25 in 38 minutes with 5 assists as well. Next game, the Clippers and the Sacramento Kings. Chrissy Paul was back 14, 6 and 12 with 3 steals, so that torpedoed any value Ray Felton had. He played just the 21, but it didn't to Austin Rivers. It didn't to team high scorer Austin Rivers, as the Clippers won 106-98. Austin Rivers dropped 24. He hit 4 triples on 7 attempts, had 6 boards, had 2 assists, and remained in the starting lineup as the 3 alongside Redick and Paul, with Marmute at the 4, which is the lineup they should have been running for majority of this time that Blake is out. So I would assume that he maintains this starting job. I would assume that he maintains 30-ish minutes a night. And that could make him a 12-team league guy. It probably leaves him a 14-team league guy mainly, but it could make him a 12-team league guy. So have a look. Austin Rivers might be the guy that you love to hate, but could also help you get some numbers to help you win your league. DeAndre Jordan went 20 and 9 in 37 minutes, blocked a shot there as well, while JJ Redick had 19 points in 32 minutes. And Jamal Crawford, weird night for Jamal Crawford. 1-1, great. 8 assists, great. 9 points, 4 of 13 shooting, 0 of 2 from the line. Just a very, very weird night for Jamal. Please don't bother with him in 12. He's owned in 46% of leagues, and Austin Rivers is in 12. Those numbers should be switched, in my opinion. The Kings, Boogie, 25, 11 and 7. He almost had the triple one. 3 threes, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Big night from Boog. And big changes to the Kings lineup here. Rudy Gay returned. He didn't displace Matt Barnes from the starting lineup. They moved Costa Koufos to the bench. And again, coaches, it takes them 2 months to realise when something's dumb. Costa Koufos and DeMarcus Cousins starting together? Dumb. Let's play these guys, Rudy Gay or Matt Barnes at the 4. Now, granted, they didn't have Rudy Gay for about a month, it felt like, so that was hard to do that. But prior to that, they were still running that Koufos Cousins bullshit. Also, the shooting guard position, Aaron Aflalo, Ben McLemore, terrible. So they tried something different. They started Ty Lawson, Darren Collison. Both played well. Collison played 35 minutes and went 25 and 2 with 3 triples. Lawson played 37. He went 17, 4 and 6 with a steal. Both blokes shot at least 50%. Both can be looked at in 12-team leagues, no doubt. You can, if they're going to maintain this sort of role, I would have Collison over Lawson, but Lawson can absolutely be grabbed. As for Barnesy, he only played the 24 minutes as a starter, had 4, 6 and 6, so nice assist numbers, clearly, but nothing to really tickle your fancy too much in any sort of standard type format, while Costa Koufos played 12 off the bench, and as happens so often, a shit starter goes from starting to not playing at all. Ben McLemore, not at all. Never going to understand this at all. Not good enough to play at all, but good enough to start games and to play with my best players. Yep, never work it out. Miami and the Lakers, no Whiteside, Jimmy Johnson. You have to own him. It's straightforward. Whiteside will impact him, but Will Reed got a lot of these centre minutes in this game. Udonis Haslem still played 7 at centre. So Johnson didn't play as much. He still played a bit. But he had 20 points. He had 4 triples, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, 1 block. And is a comfortable must-own guy to me. Dragic was looking good before his ejection, 16-3-3. He played 22 minutes, while Dion Waiters, jacking shots is his usual style, 9, 1 and 2 in 21 minutes for Waiters. I just wish he wasn't playing at all, but I don't think that's going to happen. He got more minutes than Scooter Magruder, more minutes than Wayne Ellington, and that's fair enough. He should be getting more minutes than those guys, but he should never be getting more shots than Josh Richardson, who only took 6. He scored 6 points, Joshy, in his 30 minutes, but was far from a banner night, while Tyler Johnson had one of his bigger minutes nights in a while, 35 minutes, 11, 5 and 2, a steal and a block. Inefficient, but good. Has to own Tyler Johnson. You have to own him in 12-team leagues, and he's pretty close to a 10-team league guy as well. On the Lakers, Lou Deng came back from about 4 games of shitness and missing one due to bicep tendonitis to play 30 minutes and go 19 and 14 with 3 triples. I don't know. Deng had definitely been putting up numbers prior that considered him a must-own for a stretch, and then completely shit the bed for a stretch, back to what we saw from early Luol Deng, and then comes back with this. So he's fine to grab, and I reckon he's just going to be on and off waiver-wise for big chunks of the season. Julius Randle had 15, 6 and 3 with a steal and a block. He was dealing with a sprained finger, but played through it, something we didn't hear about until very, very late in the day or the night. Well, Brandon Ingram had one of his best games, and by far, really. 17, 6 and 4 for Ingram. He was 6 of 9 from the field. He was 5 of 5 from the line, and that's a really appealing sight for Ingram. I wouldn't be going to rush and grab him or anything like that, but it's nice to see that sort of performance come from him. Tariq Black doubled. 25 minutes, 10 and 11. So Tim Mozgov played the 16. Tommy Robinson played the 17. So those 3 guys playing a lot of centre minutes. Nothing really to see there with Tariq Black. While Lou Williams bounced back with 24 points in 23 minutes. Didn't do a lot in other categories. Took 19 shots, which is a lot, but hit 9 of them. I think I talked about him fairly excessively yesterday. D'Angelo Russell only played the 26 minutes. This was a huge win for the Lakers, by the way, 127 over 100. So they didn't need to give big minutes to their stars, but Russell's really flying. 19, 6 and 5, 3 steals, a 3. He was 7 of 17 from the field, and I really think that he can become a top 50 guy in the second half of this year. Nick Young, not a great Nick Young night. Uncle P went 1 of 9 for 5 points with 5 rebounds, hit a 3, and this is what I do always talk about with him, is if the shot doesn't fall, he gives you nothing, and there's no reason to own him. And he's been shooting well above career numbers, well above recent numbers, and at some point it's going to cool. Maybe it's this one, I don't know. The last game, the Memphis Grizzlies and the Golden State Warriors, huge win in overtime, comeback win for the Grizz. They were down 20 at one stage. They won 128, 119. Zachary Randolph played 35 minutes, went 27, 11 and 6, 12 of 17 from the field. This is the perfect time if you still own Zach Randolph in 12-team leagues, which I would not recommend, but if you still own him, sell him. Name value is massive. It carries a lot of weight with people, and Zach Randolph is not the player that you might think he is or that other people might think he is, especially with the role that he's got this year, and this is a huge night for him. If you get top 100 value back, you have to do it. Marc Gasol went 23, 5 and 3. Tone Allen played 48 minutes, went 11, 12 and 3 with 6 steals. That steal specialist moniker really ringing true for him. But he's been fantastic for most of this year. He's a borderline guy though. And Mickey Conley went 27, 4 and 12 with 3 triples. Chandler Parsons, signs of life. 16 minutes for Parsons. Didn't play really at all in the second half. 10 points, 2 triples. But the fact that he got to 10 points is the big story. Really still tough to consider holding him if you're in any sort of a battle anywhere. We know his upside is big, but we don't know how long this restriction is going to continue. But it was good to show that he hadn't just completely forgotten how to play basketball. As for JaMychal Green, he saw just 20 minutes, had 4, 2 and 2, and I don't believe that he is a guy to own. As for the Warriors, Draymond 11, 8 and 4 with 3 steals before fouling out. Kevin Durant 27, 13 and 4 with 3 blocks. Very inefficient Durant, 13 of 18 from the line and 7 of 17 from the field. A weird thing to say about Kev Durant. Klay Thompson had 17 and 6. He was ill but played 42 minutes, so not a bad performance there. While Zaza Pachulia saw 30 minutes in this one because the Grizzlies did go big. 10, 4 and 2 for Zaza. Took just 4 shots, but got some minutes out there. Not really worth looking at outside of, say, 14-team leagues. Andre Iguodala continues to be poor, I think is probably the best way of me phrasing that. All right, let's now take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk DFS, get you ready for Saturday's action. All right, everyone, we're back. Let's talk perfect DFS lines of the night. Start with FanDuel. Steffi Curry, 53.8, while Conley went for 49.8. The shooting guards, Bradley, Avery, went for 41.8, while Tone Allen went for 39.9. The small forwards, LeBron at 54.6 and Kevin Durant at 50.6, so obviously spending your cash at small forward worked out pretty well. The power forwards, Nerlens Noel, 35.6 out of the blue there. Zachy Randolph for 48.2 and Will Reed for 45.5 for a total of 419.9, and that was a $59,300 roster. On DraftKings, Steph had 57, Bradley had 45.25, Wigo had 48.75, Randolph went 46.25, Will Reed went 47.5, Conley went 50.5, Mallow went 53, and Lu Deng went 41 for 389.25, and that's a roster that cost you $49,800. There are another 8 games on Saturday, which is the theme of the week, with every day having 8 games aside from Wednesday. The first one is the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers are favored by 7.5 points here, and the total is 215. Rod Stuckey is questionable with his hamstring that's caused him to miss the last few games. So obviously him returning puts a dent on guys like Monte Ellis, CJ Miles, Little Dog Glenn Robinson, but I don't think you're going to be worrying too much about those guys for DFS purposes. Let's talk point guards. 8,100 for Jeffy Teague. That's another $300 price rise for Teague.
My name is Jeff.
I don't love it at that price. Yeah, he dropped 53 in the last game. The Knicks they have been a good defensive team point guard wise. They're not at the moment. This is a boost game for him, but I still don't think it's high enough of a boost game. On DraftKings, I'm a little bit more behind it at 7,700, but on FanDuel, I reckon you can do a little bit better than Jeff at that over $8,000 price tag. Derrick Rose at 62, saying that just feels too high. It's a marginal negative for him in terms of matchup. Marginal, so not really much there. He's at 59 on DraftKings. Really nothing to like too much about Derrick Rose. In this one, Paul George defensively is obviously good. Not that he's going to be guarding Rose, but it does create some stuff that can be an issue. Miles Turner in the paint, and Rose has just been quite inefficient recently, just averaging 24 points across the last 3 games. Brandon Jennings, Aaron Brooks, we're not caring about them. Courtney Lee at 4,100. Courtney Lee is just solid. 4,100, 21 points, no upside whatsoever, but there can be value in that. He's at 39 on DraftKings, 3,900, 22 points. Lock it in. Thank you. And that can have value as well. Helps you get some of the more expensive guys into a lineup, and never discount that as something that can work, especially in cash game situations. A reliable guy that's going to make or beat value, enabling you to get some other guys in, can work, depending on who else is available. There's never anyone who is an absolute always must play guy every time, but it always depends on other factors: who's around, who's available, what are their prices, all that sort of stuff. Rod Stuckey, no. Monte Ellis, no, of course, and Justin Holiday, who is weirdly phased out of the rotation almost. Small forward, Paulie George and Mello, they're both at 79 on FanDuel. George has not been playing fantastically. He's averaging 39 across the last 5, which is okay. He's at 8,000 on DraftKings. I can understand using him, but those salaries don't fill me with a huge amount of confidence. I would want him to be averaging 40-ish, around that price. The matchup is a decent one against the Knicks. He does have some value there. He's got a solid history against the Knicks. It's not brilliant, but it's solid. I think he can do better. As for Melo, he has been doing better, but some of these games have come without Porzingis. He's averaging 48 across the last 3, had another 48 today, and he's at 76 on DraftKings, and as I said, 79 on FanDuel. He's fine. If I'm spending 79, I would actually take Mallow over Paul George on FanDuel, but obviously other sites, it's going to depend on where your salary lies. On DraftKings, he's $400 cheaper, so yeah, I would take him over there as well. Glenn Robinson, CJ Miles, they're not worth caring about. Same with Lance Thomas. Power forward, Thad Young, 5,200. He has been struggling a little. He does have a very good record against the Knicks. I think that Thad Young is a real bounce-back candidate here. His recent numbers have not been sexy at all. He hasn't been putting up good numbers, but on FanDuel at 5,200 price tag, I can totally get it, and I can totally understand using him, and I think he's a decent play going against form. On DraftKings at 55, he's probably not at the same level. Porzingis is at 7,900. He had a he had a good game. He only played 30 minutes today, put up 36 points. 7,900 is maybe a little tough, but love it on DraftKings where he's at 7,000. That's great. He's averaging 44 in the last 3, dropped to 39 in his return today. He's at 7,000. Feel free to use him, especially in the DraftKings setup. Centers, let's talk Noah at 5,100 on FanDuel, which is annoying. 5,400 on DraftKings. Again, just a little bit annoying, but I still think that he can be used. Today, again, foul trouble was a problem. I would only really consider him GPP worthy. He can, and he had been getting you 28, 29 a game, which at 5,100 is not bad, but really tough cash play. Miles Turner, on the other hand, smashing it. He's at 7,100. He's averaging 45 across the last 3. The matchup here is really, really impressive. 72 on DraftKings. Again, fine. No issue with it. Really, really like him on both sides, and he has been a real killer this season, especially recently, putting up some huge, huge numbers, as we've seen over the last couple of games. Let's get into the next one. We're looking at the New Orleans Pelicans and the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are favored by 7, and the total is 214.5. We don't know if Donatas Motiejunas will play. If Motiejunas plays, it takes away a lot of Terrence Jones' upside. That's really the only impact he is going to have, though, if he happens to suit up in his first game for his new team. I'm sure Terrence Jones is rapt about that after Motiejunas killed his value, basically Terrence Jones killed his own value by being shit, but Motiejunas and him were constantly sort of locked in battle for a couple of years. Let's talk point guards. Isaiah Thomas at 9,300. Yeah, effectively shit the bed today at that salary. And I think I did. My memory serves me correctly. I said it was a pretty scary price tag to spend up on Thomas at that sort of a salary today, and it definitely did not work in your favor. Now, the matchup he gets here is a pretty nice one. He's at 8,500 on DraftKings, which I do really like. I do like him at DraftKings at 8,500. At 9,300 on FanDuel, I reckon I'd leave that for other people to take a risk on it, and it could come true. So his GPP upside is fine. It's high, but that is a big whack of currency, and I don't feel 100% confident with it. Drew Holiday is at 7,000, so we're talking 2,300 less than Isaiah, and yes, he has not been producing anywhere near that same level. I understand that, but I feel more confident about Drew Holiday getting 35 points than I do about Isaiah Thomas getting 47. So I would definitely look at Drew, and I think he's got upside to actually put up some pretty impressive numbers in this one. I do like him here. Marcus Smart with a nice 33 pointer today. He's at 4,700. I don't really have a huge amount of reliability in him in cash. But you know what? Obviously, if you get 3,500 at sub 5,000, that's GPP-ish. Not sure I really love it, but I can totally understand it. Shooting guards, Avery Bradley, 6,300. 42 points today. Has struggled to meet value a lot of the time this season, or struggled to appear to meet value a lot of the time, but at 6,300 on FanDuel, 61 on DraftKings, I don't think it's a terrible time to use him. I really bristle when he's like 68, 69. That's the sort of issue I have with him. At these lower 600s or 6,000, sorry, I feel like it's a much better price tag to look at. He hasn't done well against New Orleans, but that was prior to him being a rebounding menace, which has come out of nowhere this season. So it's really hard to have a look at those numbers and say, oh, well, he's not going to go well, because he's got this extra bow to his game where he pulls down double the amount of rebounds now. So that's something extra to factor in. He's only averaging 30 across the last 3, so despite today's big game, the last couple hadn't been that great. But Avery Bradley's someone to look at. Bud Hield, really big game in the last one. Bud, 4,200, had 31 points. He's at 4,300 on DraftKings. I have no ability to trust him yet, but sure, you can definitely look at him in a GPP, because shooters can get hot, and we've seen his minutes trend up. He's averaging 30 over the last 3. So get him hot, get him scoring. It can definitely work out. So not a terrible play. Tyreek, 51 on FanDuel's very yuck. And at 41 on DraftKings, only played 13 minutes in the last game. So that was definitely frustrating in that sort of a situation. Not sure I really like him there. Each one more doesn't do a huge amount. Small forward, I just ripped on Jay Crowder before, but at 5,300, I reckon you get back on the Jay Crowder horse and say, all right, Jay, let's go. Let's get me 26, 27 points. I think he can do it. I don't think the matchup is a big impediment to him. So I'm all fine for using Jay Crowder on both sites. In fact, I think he's probably a little bit better over on FanDuel with the other small forwards out there. There are other ones you can take a crack at on DraftKings, but he is still a pretty solid play on both of those sites. Dante Cunningham is 3,600. I wouldn't bother. Solly Hill, ditto. Power forwards, Amir Johnson, 4,000. Had 32 today. He's averaging 23 over the last 3. And that should scream to you that $4,000 is too cheap. But there's the big risk factor with him. But as I said, the numbers have been stabilising. His role has been stabilising. His minutes have been up. So at 4,000, there is absolutely no reason, and 3,900 on DraftKings, absolutely no reason why you can't look at Amir Johnson and say, man, this guy will give me 23, will give me 22, and I'll be happy with it. There's a definite level of risk because Brad Stevens is a pain in the ass when it comes to things like that, but the trend is pushing us in that right direction. Anthony Davis is at 10,800 and he's struggled to get there. 10,800 is a big amount of cash. We're talking about a guy that you want to be giving you 53, 54 points and he's averaging just 46 across the last 5. His shooting has been way down. But the Celtics front court is the Celtics front court, and it does allow big men to put up big numbers, so there's absolutely no reason that Davis can't go for 50. I would feel a little hesitant to lock him into a cash lineup, but in a GPP, I think that it's still pretty good value at that 10,000 because there's not many blokes out there who can go 70, 75, which is what he can do. He is at 10,600 on DraftKings, but the same sort of situation applies. Terrence Jones was big in the last game, but at 4,700, I would really only restrict him to GPPs, and that's mainly going to be if Motiejunas doesn't suit up at all. Centers, Al Horford at 42 in the last game, but at 7,400, I don't feel it for Al, and I'll continue to not feel it. On DraftKings, I continue to feel it because he's at 6,700, and it's such a big discrepancy between both of these sites. Horford's salary dipped again over on DraftKings down to that price. He's averaging 40 over there. He's absolutely fine to use over there. FanDuel, it's not great for him. And he just continues to be one player that the sites are really, really weird on, and it just seems so far apart in their valuations. All right, let's go on to the next game. We're talking Toronto and the Chicago Bulls. The Raptors are favored by 2, and the total is 208 points here. We don't know the status of Patrick Patterson. If Patterson is out, I would imagine the Raptors go back to Bebe starting next to Valanciunas, and that does increase Valanciunas' value. So he's going to be a guy to look at. But let's talk, it increases Bebe's value, obviously, as well. Let's talk point guards. Kyle Lowry, really interesting discussion over on Reddit about Kyle Lowry. I tweeted it out today about people asking, and the question was, why does Josh Lloyd think Kyle Lowry is going to drop off? And to the person who posted that, I hope you're listening to this for a start, and I hope you did read the other comments, because the other comments that everyone wrote is basically exactly right. Because he's shooting at a ridiculously high rate. He is shooting 5-6% above numbers from last year, above career stats, numbers, and on tough shots, shit that can't continue. I say that he's going to drop off in the second half of the season because he's 31 years old and he's playing 37 minutes a night, and it's what's happened the last 2 years. He was ranked 9th last year. He was ranked 25th after the All-Star break. He was ranked 96th in the last month. The year before that, he was the 15th ranked player. I think 15th or 20th ranked player. He was 15th ranked player. He was the 25th ranked player after the All-Star break. He was the 96th ranked player in the last month of the season. That's as drop-offy as it gets. He had a stinker, he had a good game, he had another good game. We're not quite in Kyle Lowry drop-off territory yet, but he's at 8,700, and that's a $600 price rise. The Bulls matchup is a good one for him, and I would definitely rather spend 8,700 on him than 9,300 on Isaiah Thomas, but I still don't think that it's the best use of 8,700 in a FanDuel lineup. But I do encourage you to go and read that post that was up over on Reddit talking about Kyle Lowry and everyone's stats that people did some great research stuff over there talking about the stats that Lowry puts up, the numbers, how it tracks with his career numbers, how he's dropped off. people were putting up some really, really impressive stuff. So I do encourage you to go and have a read of that. As for the Bulls starting point guard, it's going to be Michael Carter-Williams again. Now, he's looked good. He's put up decent numbers, but FanDuel's gone and stuffed it and bumped his salary to $5,000. And that makes me say absolutely no thanks. In a shit matchup for a guy that's only giving you 22 points over the last 3 games, I really can't see any reason why I would go to Michael Carter-Williams and say, yeah, he's going to be the point guard for me to use. Not going to happen. Corey Joseph at 39, no thanks. Jaren Grant, double no thanks. Let's go to shooting guard. DeMar DeRozan at 8,300. If you're spending up at shooting guard, he's going to be a good option, but his numbers haven't been there. He's averaging under 40 points over the last 5, 37 in the last 3, which are okay. He gets a marginal hit actually in his projections heading up against the Bulls. So I'm not saying that he is a core player to go by, but he is the best high-priced shooting guard that's on the market, and you should feel fairly confident of getting at least 35 out of DeMar DeRozan, and that means something. That can have value. It's not valueless. That's the same thing as saying it doesn't have value, but it is something to say that I will get 38 points out of this guy. I will be confident in it, and then he's got the ability to go above that. Sure, he might cost me, but in a cash game, that's a pretty valuable thing to have, and I think that I know that DeRozan has got that at the moment. So he's definitely someone to have a look at if you've got cash to have a squiz at. Dwayne Wade at 6,500 is dropping off in a pretty big way. His minutes are down, his playing time is down. I'm not looking at him as a real great option here. He's at 61 on DraftKings, which is a little bit more appealing, but it's still not a fantastic price to pay. Small forwards, Jim Butler, 9,300 for Jim. Really not a good matchup here. He has not done well against Toronto. He's averaging 57 over the last 3, despite having just 41 against Chicago. But 9,300 is too high in my mind, and I think it's a very, very risky play to go and use Jim Butler. 8,900 on DraftKings. I'm a little bit more receptive to it, but I'm still not really. I think there are better guys out there that you can spend that cash on. Dougie McDermott, 3,800. He had 28 in the last game. Good number from McDermott. Really good performance. But I would look at him as a GPP option only. While Terry Ross, he's at 41. GPPs only. He has been good, though. I'll give him that. Damari Carroll has not been good. I will give him that. He's at minimum salary, though, Damari. He played 39 minutes in the last game, put up 17 DFS points. So, played 39 minutes, just barely beat value. That should give you an idea of what Damari Carroll is like. Look at him in a GBP, but then probably look in a different direction. Pat, no. Nick Mirotic at 4,400. The minutes are up, but the production's not quite where it needs to be at 4,400. I reckon you can do better than getting Nick Mirotic, but DraftKings, I like him a bit more. I think that the scoring system suits him. He's at 4,500 over there. I'd be a little bit happier about using Mirotic on DraftKings than I would using him on FanDuel. Taj Gibson went off in their last game against the Cavs, which he always seems to do. He had 30 points. He's at 4,800 here. He's got a decent record against the Raptors, so I wouldn't be completely averse to rostering him here. He should. I feel okay about saying that he's going to get 25 points. So I think that he is a decent, not necessarily a high ceiling guy, but a decent guy to take a look at. And the centers, Robin Lopez, the projections love him, but I don't know what to make of him because I get worried about his minutes. So I've got him projected for 30 minutes. But that could easily be 20. It could easily be 17. We don't know. He's very up and down. And at 4,300, he could easily smash that value. Like very, very easily. But I just don't know what sort of playing time he's going to get. So that makes him a GPP type guy only. I could say the same for Jonas Valanciunas, who's at 5,300 over on FanDuel. He's at 52 on DraftKings. He had a monster in the last game, 34 points, which at 5,300 is obviously huge. But that was without Patterson. That was starting next to Bebe. Now, what the Raptors do here is going to be interesting. Against the Bulls and their front court, it's easy to score points. There's no huge pick and roll threat in the front court with Gibson and Lopez. That's not too much. It's not Gasol and Aldridge. It's not too much of a worry. So I think that Valanciunas should be able to push his minutes up there a little bit. But if the Bulls go to big chunks of Mirotic, Valanciunas is going to struggle to get out on him if he needs to. So there is a degree of risk in him, but I do think that he is in a better position than what he has been in some of the other games that he's played. As for Bebe, he's at 3,600. I don't love him, but there's not many cheap centers out there who you can take a punt on who have got an upside of 26, 27 minutes, especially if Patrick Patterson's out. So he'd become a really optimal punt guy, but no way that you can trust him in any cash sort of format. The next game we take a look at, let's go on to, where are we? Utah. They're taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Jazz are favoured by 3.5, and George Hill has already been ruled out, and the total is a piddling 195. So that's not ideal for us. We have got Hill out, as I mentioned. Ken Fareed, wrong game. Shabazz Muhammad missed today's game with an illness. He is questionable. If he is out, Brandon Rush just steps into his role, and literally nothing changes. So it doesn't really impact us whatsoever. Let's talk point guard. Shelvin Mack is at 4,100 over on FanDuel. He had a monster against Toronto. I wouldn't be expecting him to be able to replicate that. And the fact that he's at 4,600 on DraftKings is a little bit off-putting, but I do think that he can get close to 23 or 24 with DraftKings points, and I think he can get a 23, 24 on FanDuel, which at 4,100 is good value. So I think he's a decent guy to look at. Rick Rubio at 5,500. Not a good matchup, although George Hill makes it a little bit easier, and he's been definitely not producing that sort of a number recently, so not going to be getting on Rick in this one here. Shooting guard Rod Hood, 4,200. Lots of minutes, nothing production. 35 minutes in the last game, 16 points. 4,200 though is mighty appealing. So I would absolutely be considering Rod in a GPP, and I would not touch him at all in any sort of cash situation. Zach LaVine will look to bounce back. He had a terrible one today, only 17 points. He's at 6,100, but this matchup is negative. It is a big negative. It is a real troublesome one. 6,100 for Zach LaVine. I am not willing to put my balls out and say, yep, let's get back on Zach. Obviously, he's got 40-point upside in GPPs, but this is not the matchup that is going to really be able to showcase that all the time. Small forwards, we go. 6,200, had 47 today. Love it. Matchup, horrendous. And we know how unreliable Wiggins is. GPPs only, and even then, not a good spot for him. Whereas Gordo Hayward is at 7,500. Actually a negative matchup for him as well. The slow pace, not willing to spend up on either of those guys in this situation. Joey Ingles, Shabazz, Joe Johnson, none of those guys should be really considered in your player pool. Power forward, Derek Favors at 4,500 on FanDuel. He's at 52 on DraftKings. Like him on both sites a lot. The matchup is probably a break even for him, but the fact that he is a guy that should play 29 minutes, we assume he will. Now, the only issue I have here is that it is the front half of a back-to-back for Utah, and when that happened earlier in the week, he played like 18 minutes and didn't start the second half. He then backed it up with like 28 or something in the second half of that back-to-back, but it is still going to be risky. Now, the Timberwolves go big all the time, so that's going to enable him to play some decent minutes. At 4,500, he clearly can get 26 points, 27 points, 30 points. He can easily do it, but there is risk factors involved there. We look at what he is over on DraftKings at 5,200. It's probably less enticing, but I can totally see using him on both of those sites. I would lean GPP, but on FanDuel at that price in cash, it's not a write-off situation. Love Gorgie Jeng. He's been rock solid recently. He's at 5,400 on FanDuel. He's at 53 on DraftKings. He's averaging 31 on DraftKings in the last 5. 30 on FanDuel. 5,400. It doesn't get really much more consistent than what Gorgie Jeng's been providing lately. Now, the matchup is a negative one, absolutely, but I still think that he's got so much surplus value that it can work out in his favor. Nemanja Bjelica, I don't know why I bothered talking about him. Boris Diaw, Trey Lyles, yeah, they're not happening either. Center, Carl Towns, 9,000. Big price. Rudy Gobert, it's a worry. It's a definite worry. It is strictly GPP for me. I would not be looking at him in cash. The matchup is horrendously bad. The price is fairly high, but if you're spending up on a center, Towns is going to be that guy. That doesn't mean it's a good thing to do, but he is going to be that guy. So have a look. Have a think about it, but don't get yourself absolutely locked in. I have to take Towns in my roster. Now on DraftKings he's at 8,700, which makes him a little bit more appealing at that much reduced salary, which is a $900 price drop. But the Gobert factor is a real issue for opposing centers. We've seen that basically all season. Denver and Oklahoma City, they're getting things cracking in the next game. We've got the Thunder favored by 7.5, and the total is 218.5. Nick Jokic is questionable with an illness. Darrell Arthur, who's been starting and playing all right, is probable with a knee problem. And for Oklahoma City, we've had Campaign back for 2 games in the D-League, and there's been some speculation that he may make his NBA debut or season debut this Saturday, so he's questionable as well. Obviously, if Payne plays, that cuts into Samaje Kristen's role and maybe Alex Abrinez's role, but it's not really impacting us DFS-wise. But we're really good to see Campaign back. Let's hope that he can get it going in the next couple of days. Let's talk point guards. Russ Westbrook, 12,200. It doesn't get more point guardy than Russell Westbrook. I guess that's a way to describe him. He's at 12.9 on DraftKings, which is high, but he's averaging 65 points in the last 3, which is fine at that. And the matchup here, not that he really gives 2 shits about matchups, but the matchup is a positive one. It's a massively positive one going up against Denver. I really think that he's look, if you're spending up on him is a better option than spending 9,000 on Towns, I believe. So while there are some cheap point guards around, getting Russ in is a pretty surefire way of getting close to 60 points on most nights, but especially this one where it is a good matchup for him. Manny Moutier, 4,700 for Man. Hasn't really been getting much happening lately, but we know he's got tremendous upside. So I would look at Moutier as a GPP guy. He can have some issues. He might get torched by Westbrook, but Westbrook doesn't provide a huge amount of resistance defensively. So absolutely Moutier can be considered, but in cash, I think that's suicidal. Jameer Nelson, Jamal Murray, none of those guys are going to kick it, cut it, whatever. Vic Oladipo, 5,900, has been pretty solid since he came back. 29 points over the last 3. This match is really easy, this matchup, in terms of fantasy points. You should be looking at a significant bump. I think he gets over 30, and if he gets over 30, that returns his value without too much hassle. At 6,600 on DraftKings, I'll have to say no to that. That is a $600 price rise, and it is too high. So I don't think he's a great option over there. Gaz Harris hasn't been producing the goods. He's at 4,600, so not a big enough salary dump for me to consider looking at him. GPP upside play only here. Farton Will Barton. Barton's always a GPP guy, but the minutes trend for him has been bad, so it's not a priority one, obviously. Small forward Jeremy Grant, no. Andre Robertson, good game in the last one, but in general, no. Wilson Chandler at 5,600. He was back to the bench for the last game, and his numbers have been well down, but his salary is not too high. We look at him on FanDuel where he's 5,600. He's 56 on DraftKings, but I'm not having faith in it happening here. And the Rooster at 6,000. I don't see much upside in the Rooster at 6,000. All I see is downside, and that's really not what I want to look at in cash or in GPPs. I'm just not sure that he's able to get that 30 points here. I'm really not feeling it at all. He's averaging just 28 over the last 5. He's averaging 30 over the last 3, but coming off a stinker 20-point performance. Not really feeling Gallinari here. Enes Kanter's at 5,500. The numbers for him have been good, but I'm not sure how he fits in this matchup. So he is one that I will probably leave alone. At 52 on DraftKings, I feel a little bit better about him, and I think that he's more a GPP type of play over there, but still not 100% on board. While Steve Adams at 5,800 has been cranking it out in a big way, averaging 36 over the last 3, 32 over the last 5. The matchup here is a good one for him. I think he is okay to use at that salary. I don't think he's going to win you a GPP, but I think he's a solid cash play at that salary. Jokic, where is he? He's at 7,800. We don't know if he's going to play. That's a $700 price rise. He's at 7,300 on DraftKings. I think that's a fade situation for Jokic in this one. Negative matchup, ill. But in saying all this, his lowest score in his last 5 games has been 37 points. And at 7,800, that's almost value. But just a few factors in this one aren't making me feel great about it, and one of them is Steve Adams. One of them is his illness, and that's why I'm just a little bit concerned about using Jokic in this one. Domantas Sabonis, Darrell Arthur, none of those guys are really worth looking at. Ken Farid or Yusuf Nurkic, I don't think they're going to be worth looking at. Now, if Jokic is out, it's going to be Nurkic. And especially if Jokic and Farid are out, it's going to be Nurkic, who's at $4,000 on FanDuel and $36 on DraftKings. He will become one of the plays of the day if Jokic happens to be out. So that's a situation to monitor, and hopefully we're able to get that news before lineups lock. The next game we take a look at, we go to Atlanta and Dallas. The Hawks are favored by 2. The total is 197 in this game. The Korver trade has not gone through yet, so there will be no Dunleavy. There'll be no There'll be no Mike Dunleavy. There'll be no Mo Williams, and there'll be no Kyle Korver for Atlanta. For Dallas, JJ Barea is questionable. If Barea plays, it cuts any value that Seth Curry had. Not that he had a huge amount for a DFS point of view. Anyway, let's talk point guards. Darren Williams at 6,100. It doesn't get much better than going up against the Hawks, but I would leave Darren for a GPP. I don't really think that he's going to be a great cash point guard option. That's on FanDuel. At 6,000 on DraftKings, I'll say the same thing. I think there's better point guards out there that you can take a peek at. He's not horrible though. The matchup could enable a big game from him. Malcolm Delaney, Devin Harris, JJ Barea, no. Dennis Schroeder is the guy we're going to look at though. But $500 price rise, terrible matchup, $7,300 price tag. I really don't like it. 65 on DraftKings is appealing. He's averaging 37 a game in the last 3. But the matchup is still a real negative, but I can totally understand using him on DraftKings, just not on FanDuel. Shooting guards, Wes Matthews at 54. Too unreliable and not enough upside, so that's a no. Timmy Hardaway at 41. Definitely worth a look. He's averaging 25 over the last 3, but there is no way you can trust Tim Hardaway in cash. His highest score in his last 5 is 36. His lowest score in his last 5 is 3.6. And they both came in 22 minutes. That is the Tim Hardaway story. So he'll probably play a couple more than 22 minutes. But what does that mean? You could get 38 or you could get 6. That screams GPP, and it also says stay away in cash. Seth Curry's at 42. I would rather take Timmy Hardaway at 41 than Seth at that price. Small forward, Tarbo's at 4,200. Should get a bump with Korver out. Had 28 in the last game with no Korver. 4,200. Absolutely worth a look over on FanDuel, and 44 on DraftKings makes him a pretty solid, cheap option without a huge amount of upside. It's fair to say, but he is worth a look. Kent Bazemore's at 3,900. Looks cool. He had 6 points in the last game. Now he can go off. We know he can put up the big game occasionally. There is absolutely no reason to trust Kent Bazemore. It is a slow pace. It is a good defensive team to go up against fantasy wise. So I'm not. Yeah, look, GPP, and that is it. If you go cash on Kent Bazemore, you're asking for it. And he's at 4,500 on DraftKings, which is very, very not even appealing in GPPs. The pencil is at 6,900.
Giggity!
He has been fantastic, especially now that he's playing his best position at the 4. 37 points over the last 3. But 6,900 is relatively expensive. Not sure how high his upside is. I don't think that he is a superb option here. At 6,400 on DraftKings, I'm absolutely more behind it. That's a $600 price drop. So I'm totally fine with him going up against Atlanta. But Paul Millsap's a very, very good defender. So there is that factor that could be an issue. In terms of actual fantasy stats, it's a marginal increase in value for power forwards going up against the Hawks. But the Millsap factor does worry me. I could look at him in GPPs, but I'm not really sure his upside is high enough to really warrant that. DeAndre Bembry probably gets some extra run. He's at minimum salary. Shouldn't care. And Dorian Finney-Smith's at minimum as well. He'll have one game out of every 10 that's decent. Maybe this is the one. Always worth a GPP look in a pool. Dirk is at 5,300 on FanDuel. Had 27 in the last game, which would have given value. He's at 5,000 over on DraftKings, which again can be used. It's a pretty risky play to take Dirk though, but it could pay off. I just don't think the upside's that high, but I think he could be used in cash, but he's still too risky for cash. So that's why I look at it and go, yeah, it looks fine, looks nice, but it's not going to be for me. As for Millsap at 8,000, well, Millsap could be traded before this game. Who knows? He's at 8,100. I feel pretty good about Millsap being able to get at least close to 40 here. So he's a decent play, and he's at 75 on DraftKings. So I do like him just a little bit more over on DraftKings. Centers, Dwight Howard has been fairly limited recently. At 7,500, I will pass on Dwight Howard. He's at 7,000 on DraftKings. That is a better price, but still, I would look at him as a GPP guy only, as a contrarian guy that not many people will take. Andrew Bogut, no, he's just not going to get enough minutes, and he has not been productive of late at all. We've got 2 games to go. Let's go Charlotte and San Antonio. In San Antonio, the Spurs are favoured by 11, and the total is 207 points here. Cody Zeller is questionable with concussion. If Zeller is out, we get a marginal bump for Marv Williams. We get a bump for Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who gets a bump anyway, and we get a huge bump for Spencer Hawes. Hawes is the guy we want to take a look at 3,800 if Zeller happens to be out. He had 29 points in the last game, which is obviously a huge number to come in at almost minimum salary. So he would be the guy that you'd want to take a look at. Nick Batum has already been ruled out of this one. At point guard, Kemba Walker is going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting. He's at 7,600. I think he's actually a pretty good play at that price. He's averaging 47 across the last 3. He's going to take on some extra usage. Yes, it's against the Spurs, and it's a marginal negative. Well, no, it's not. It's a significant negative against him in this matchup, but I do like it. At 79 on DraftKings, the same story. I still think that he is a pretty good player with some significant boost in usage. Now, what do we make of Tone Parker? He's at 4,900 on FanDuel and dropped 37 in the last game. He's averaging over 30 in the last 5. His lowest score in the last 5 has been 24, which at 4,900 is basically exactly where you need to get to. The matchup is easy. It's a real boost to him. But I still feel weird about Tony Parker in DFS. I would look at him in GPPs, and I would absolutely consider him a key part of a GPP player pool, especially on FanDuel. 5,000 on DraftKings, I'm not quite as sold, but still, he's been exceeding value for the last few games there, and his lowest score on DraftKings has been 25. So, yeah, I do think that he is a very interesting play, and you might even be able to get away using him in cash, but I still don't feel 100% confident with that. Pat Mills, no. Ramon Sessions, no. Shooting guard, Jeremy Lamb, love it here. 3,800 for Lamb. We saw him step up even when he got into Marco Bellinelli's reserve role. Now, I'm not saying he's going to start necessarily, but he could start for Batum. It's going to be him, it's going to be Bellinelli, and it's going to be Kidd-Gilchrist who get Batum's 36 minutes. So there's a number of minutes to go around. So he doesn't have to get all 36 of those. Even if he plays 25, 26 minutes, 30 minutes is what he could easily get. He has got heaps of scope to fail at that limited price, and I think he'll be fine. So he is one of the best cash plays of the day, and still has pretty high tournament upside as well, but I think he'll be fairly highly owned. But it's a name to watch. Marco Bellinelli at 3,900, absolutely another guy. Now, coming back from his own injury, but how do we... he played 21 minutes in the last game. Can he get enough playing time? That's somewhat of a concern, but I think that Bellinelli is absolutely a GPP guy to take a look at 3,900 and 3,800 on DraftKings. Both guys are fine to use, and I think they're going to be really interesting guys to take a look at. Small forward Kawhi is at 8,500. Doesn't have any sort of Batum defensive issues, or doesn't have to guard Batum, but he's going to have Kidd-Gilchrist on him defensively, so that's a little bit of a worry given how good Kidd-Gilchrist is, but it doesn't necessarily translate into a reduction in his fantasy stats. I think he should be looking at 40 plus here, but Kawhi's recent numbers haven't been fantastic, only averaging 39 across the last 5, which at 8,500 you want more. On DraftKings at 8,100, I like it a lot more, but I still think he's a solid play on both sides. Kidd-Gilchrist gets some extra run. He's at 4,500. That's a GPP only type of situation to me. Power forwards, Marv Williams had 32 points. I think he gets, in the last game, I think he gets a bump as well with Batum out because it pushes some of the other players down. Kidd-Gilchrist has to play more on the wing, not as much at the 4. And if Zeller is out as well, it does really help Marv at 4,400. So I would look at him especially if Zeller is out, but even so, I think he's a decent guy to look at without having a massive amount of upside. Dave Lee, no. LaMarcus Aldridge, 7,900, has been crushing it, putting up big numbers, but can he continue to shoot for the 7th game in a row over 60% from the field? I'm going to say no, and that's going to make 7,900 a very tough price for him to get up to. Now, on DraftKings, it's a better story, 7,100, but I'm still not 100% convinced. I'm much more receptive to it on DraftKings, but I'm far from convinced that it's going to be the right option. Frank the Tank Kaminsky at 3,900, he's a GPP guy if Zeller sits. If not, he's a nothing. At centre, Powell at 6,600. I really like Powell here. It's a great matchup for him. He's coming off a big 39-pointer in the last game. I think he's a GPP guy. I don't think he's a cash play, but I do really like this situation for him. If Zala plays, I wouldn't be looking at him really anyway, and obviously if Zala's out, we're going to be going to Spencer Hawes. Here's the option there. Not Roy Hibbert, although Hibbert was decent in the last game. Last game of the night is Detroit at Portland. We've got the the Blazers favoured by 3, and the total is 212. Aaron Baines is questionable with his ankle. If Baines plays, I don't think there's any point in having Boban Marjanovic in lineups. I don't even think he plays, despite how impressive he was in the last game. And even if Baines misses, I reckon Boban's ownership percentage is going to be too high, because it was a game where John Lua and Andre Drummond were limited to under 25 minutes due to foul trouble, and that enabled Boban. Now, Boban played well, but it enabled him to play a lot more minutes than what he would have done in any sort of normal circumstance. So relying upon Boban if Baines is ruled out is definitely going to be really not great for cash games. But in one of 30 lineups in the tournament, sure. But I reckon his ownership percentage is going to be way too high. Point guards, Dame Lillard came back from his injury, dropped 40. 9,100 is a big price. It's a good matchup. I think there are other point guards out there that are better, but it's not to say that Dame is not usable. I just don't really love the 9,000 price tag. And in cash, he is highly, highly unreliable. He's at 8,600 on DraftKings. I feel much better about him over there, and I would even consider him in cash potentially. But yeah, not at 9,100 over on FanDuel. Reggie Jackson has been killing it, but that means it's a $7,100 price rise over on FanDuel, which turns me off him somewhat. If we look at him on DraftKings, it's a $300 price rise to $7,000. Now, he's averaging 44 on DraftKings over the last 3 games. He's averaging 41 on FanDuel, which is numbers that clearly exceed the actual price that you have to pay for him. But do we consider it a lock that it happens? No, but I'm absolutely for using him. He's got a great record against Portland. He's in great form. I think that he can exceed the 35-point mark that we need him to get to, and he's a guy that definitely can be used, even though that price is just a little bit worrisome. Ish Smith, we don't care about too much. Shooting guards, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for 5,500 has been decent lately. I think he's still more a GPP guy, coming off a 15-point performance in the last one, but this matchup is an okay one for him. Not great, but not terrible. He's a decent guy to take a peek at. 8,000 for CJ McCollum on FanDuel. It's getting pretty tough. Now, in the game that Lillard came back, he still played well. He had value at 42 points, definitely. But I don't really trust him to do that again. 7,800 on DraftKings. Now, I like this because that's dropped by 1,200, and I can get behind using him. But defensively, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's a real menace, and that could pose a problem for McCollum. So I reckon he's a fade to me. Alan Crabb is not someone to be interested in either. Marcus Morris dropped 39 in the last game. He's at 4,600. I have no ability to trust Marcus Morris putting up those numbers on the regular basis, so I'll say leave him out of it. Mo Harkless at 4,700 has been solid, and I think that he's worth a look, mainly in a cash game, just to go, hey, let's get 24 points. All right, Mo Harkless, you can do that for me. Whereas Evan Turner at the same price is not someone I would take. Power forward, Al-Farouq Aminu is hitting his straps. He's at 4,800, but more importantly, his minutes are at 35 over the last 3. He had 32 points in the last game. The matchup here is a solid bonus for him, but his salary's jumped by $700, so that's somewhat of a turn-off. 48 on FanDuel, 49 on DraftKings, but absolutely usable on both sites. Whereas Johnny Lure at 48 has not been producing that sort of a number, but this is the Portland front court, so big men can go off, so no reason to completely fade John Lure. I think he can have value in this matchup, which should be an easier one. Toby Harris has been killing it. He's at $6,000. He's averaging 31 in the last 3, 31 in the last 5, and at $6,000 you get 31. Your cash games will absolutely love that price. So Toby, fine to look at. And on DraftKings at 6,200, that's just maybe a little bit high, so I might fade him on draft, but I could consider using him for sure. At center, it's Andre Drummond, who has got a really great matchup, but we know how up and down Drummond is. He makes a great GPP center at 7,900 and 7,600 on DraftKings, but cash, any time he can shit on the table, and that's obviously not ideal. but love him in GPPs. Mason Plumlee at 6,500 has been crushing it. I think that he gets 30 plus again, and that really gives you value. And he's at 59 on DraftKings. You can't get a really much better price than that. We're done with the games. Let's look at picks of the day now before we wrap this up. On FanDuel, we've got Shelvin Mack at 41, Drew Holiday 7,000, and Russ at 12.2. Shooting guards, Jeremy Lamb 38, Oladipo 59, and DeRozan 83. The small forwards, Tarbo's at 42, Crowder's at 53, and Leonard is at 85. The power forwards, Derek Favors 45, Jeng at 54, and Tony Davis at 10.8. And the centers, Bebe is at 36, Mason Plumlee's at 65, and Townsy, as a GPP only, 9,000. DraftKings, Shelvin Mack 46, Jeff Teague 77, Isaiah at 86, Jeremy Lamb at 4,000, Avery Bradley 61, and DeRozan at 8,000. Small forwards, Tarbo's at 44, Crowder's at 53, and Leonard's at 81. The power forwards, Aminu 49, Porzingis at 7,000, and Davis at 10.6. And the centers, Robin Lopez 43, Mason Plumlee 59, and Townsy's at 8,700. Let's go to the Aussies now. Moneyball, Shelvin Mack 39, Reggie Jackson 53, ludicrous price. Russ Westbrook 11,800. For those of you who don't know and you hear me say this is a ludicrous price on Moneyball, it's the same scoring as FanDuel, the same roster construction, the same salary cap, but the prices are just so ridiculously low that for you to cash, you need like 340. But Reggie Jackson at 53 is stupid. That is so low. Jeremy Lamb's a minimum salary. Oladipo 52, DeRozan 81. Small forwards, Tarbo's at 38, Paul George is at 7,000, and Kawhi's at 83. Power forwards, Aminu minimum salary. Gorgie Jeng 55, and Anthony Davis 10.2. And at centre, Joakim Noah 45, Andre Drummond 74, and Karl Towns 9,300. On Draft Stars, MCW 5350, Reggie Jackson 92, and Isaiah Thomas 14050. Shooting guards, Jeremy Lamb 61, Oladipo 10.550, and Kawhi at 15.550. Small forwards, Tarbo's at 62, Crowder's at 95, and Paulie George at 15.850. The power forwards, Al-Farouq Aminu 7.750, Mason Plumlee 10.550, and Anthony Davis 18.250. And rounded out with the centers, Johnny Lua 7.950, Al Horford 12.050, and Kristaps Porzingis 14.650. We are done. It is boiling hot here. Can't wait to turn the air conditioner back on. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. Check out the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network and, of course, basketballmonster.com. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Joel Embiid.